G'day Trailblazers, my name is Cam, and for today's video we're covering off Lesson 3 in the Introduction to AMPscript, putting together our learnings from Lessons 1 and 2 to create a fully personalized email with a dynamic voucher code. Now in today's session, we'll be covering off some content that we covered in Lessons 1 and 2 of the Introduction to AMPscript. If you've not checked out those lessons, then please do pause the video now and go back and check them out, as we do have some data extensions and email content we'll be reusing from those previous lessons. So for today's lesson, we have the following scenario to try and solve. We've been tasked with sending out an email to some subscribers based on a recent event that we held. Now, rather than creating different emails for different segments, for example, the segment of customers who attended the event and a segment of those who didn't attend the event, we'd rather just create one smart email that can address both segments in one by using some dynamic content, some AMPscript, to show or hide some content based on their attending or not attending the event. So our email will be sent to our sample rows subscriber list here, but we're going to be using a lookup into the event log data extension to see if they attended the event, yes or no. Now if they did attend the event, we want to show them their voucher, their lucky door prize. If they didn't attend the event, then of course we don't want to show them anything at all and not make them jealous of missing the event. Now, if we do want to show them the voucher, of course, we can't use the raw data in our data extension. It's not very human friendly, so we are going to use some format functions to make sure that our voucher information, including the voucher amount, the voucher code, and the voucher expiry date, are easy to read for our customers. Looking now at the concept for our email for today, we have the following brief. We want to have an image at the top, followed by some header text and some normal paragraph text, and below that's going to be our personalization. Now for those customers who did attend the event and got a lucky door prize, the section in green here is what the marketers want us to produce. Congratulations, you won a lucky door prize, the voucher code, voucher value, and of course the use by date of that voucher. Of course, if the customer did not attend the event and does not have a lucky door prize, then show nothing as shown here by the red. That's going to be our variable content for today, so let's now jump into Marketing Cloud and give it a go. So following on from our previous lesson, we do have our email already created in Content Builder. We already have a very nice layout with our header banner, our image, a header line, and also a space for some text. Let's start off now by clearing out that previous text section and putting in some new values for today. So clear out that text and leave a nice space for text for our marketers by dragging our text block in, and we'll leave this here as sample text. And below our sample text, of course, is going to be our section of variable content based on what our subscribers did if they attended or did not attend that event. So let's now jump back in and make another text block below our sample text to put our variable content in for our voucher codes. Now for today, let's go ahead and start to make out what our scripts will look like. Now the first thing we have to do, of course, from that decision split is try and find out if the subscriber attended or did not attend the event. So the first thing we should be doing is making our AMPscript block. So we'll go %, open our block, and then close the block followed by %. This will be where we start to decide with our AMPscript if they attended or did not attend the event. Now to do this, we can of course set some values to look up that event attended. So we do have, of course, the ID field in our sample rows data extension, which is our sendable data extension. We're able to look up against the ID field in our event log. There it is, ID field, which of course is where our event attended value is. So we can go in and use our lookup function. We're looking up the event log data extension, so I can copy the event log data extension name just like that, go back into Content Builder and start to write it out by saying set attended will be equal to lookup for our lookup function. The first ordinal for lookup, of course, is the data extension, the event log data extension. The second ordinal is the value to return. Now we want to try and have a look if they attended the event, so we'll use the event attended function. Now we can go back in and say we'll be returning the event attended value. Of course, we're going to be looking up on what? Well, where the ID field in event log, so ID field, copy that. Here's the ID field will be equal to what? Well, it's equal to the ID field in our sendable data extension, which of course is our ID field in sample rows. But of course we don't need our %% signs, so remove those, and there it is. It's going to print out the ID value, where it's equal to the ID field in the lookup field on event log. It's going to return back the attended event. So we can go down now and try out the values for ourselves, and we should get one of three values, true, false, or empty. So we can try it out. %% equals v, %%, and let's print out the attended value. So put it there, and we'll call it attended equals. So let's try it for a couple of our subscribers now, and make sure that we are getting back our true, false value. It's very important to make sure you test your AMP script as you build it, to make sure you don't develop too much and then find the mistake later on. Now Brandy, we did know, did attend the event. We do have Brandy's record here. We can go on to our next record, which is Cody. Now Cody the bear, it looks like, did not attend the event. Is that correct? Yes, there's no Cody in the event log, so a null value came back. So we've seen true, we've seen null. Cloudy should be false. Let's check. Go to our next record, which is Cloudy, false. Perfect. So we do have all three values coming back. So what we'll do, we can now go back into our content and we can have a look at our email code once more. We know decision split is based on if you attended the event, yes or no. Now, of course, if you didn't attend because you weren't invited, you will have a null value. If you were invited but didn't attend, your value will be false. But if you were invited and you did attend, then the value is true. So what we can do is say, if the attended value that we just set above is equal to true, then you did attend the event. So then you attended. Else, if it's false or null, then you didn't. In which case we can then end the if statement. So if you attended, we're going to do some things. We're going to show you your voucher code, the voucher value, and also the expiry date. If you didn't attend, we're going to show you nothing at all. So what we can do is we can start to format our AMP script now, so we can start to build out the content inside of it. So if you didn't attend, we're not going to show you anything at all. So you can in fact remove the else statement here because there is nothing to show in the else condition. We don't need to show that option, so we can drop out that data. We only have the true condition being rendered if attended equals true. Now, if that is true, of course, we do want to show some HTML. So we can actually end our if statement code block here by ending our code block like that, and then restarting it again below, %, open block. Everything that happens now between the then function code word and the end if word here will be rendered outside of this code block, which means it's going to be in HTML. We can try that out now by leaving the word attended. We can drop out that function and try it out for ourselves. So it's only going to show the word attended if the customer we're rendering has attended the event. Go done and try this out. Go next. Now, of course, our first one that we were checking here was going to be Cloudy, who we know did not attend the event. We can go back one. Cody, we also know didn't attend the event, but Brandy we know did. Brandy attended. Perfect. The value is now showing. So we've now got a working example of showing content if the customer attended and not showing content if they didn't attend or weren't invited. So with our AMP script if statement working as intended, let's go ahead and start to build out what the HTML might look like inside. Now we know, of course, that we do want to have some copy here, which is congratulations, you won a door prize. So we can say, congratulations, you won a door prize, a lucky door prize. Just like that. Now below this, we want to have those values, which was going to be the voucher code, followed by the code. Then we're going to have the voucher value, followed by the value. And below that, the use by date. And of course, that being the date to show. So hopefully we can now check this out for ourselves, make sure this comes through as HTML in our email. We can go next once more. Again, always checking your AMP script as we go through and develop it. Don't get too far along to then find a mistake. So Cody, we have nothing, but go back one and Brandy, congratulations, you won a lucky door prize. Good one. Shows nothing, shows what we want to show. Good. Let's go back into our content then, and we'll start to fill out those values with our AMPscript lookups. So to start with, we do have our first lookup function here, looking up to see if they attended the event. Then of course we have our code and our values. So that's three different things to look up, all inside the same data extension. Three different values. Our first value looking up the ID, showing true or false, showing the amount, and showing the voucher code. Now you know, all this lookup is a lot of effort. A lot of times you're always searching for one value to return one value. We have up our sleeve a different function in Salesforce Microcode that we can use to return back multiple values in the same row. That's the LookupRows function. The LookupRows function is a really useful AMPscript function that you should know and should be in every Marketing Cloud user's toolkit. Now I do have a whole separate video on this one, which I will put in the description below for you to check out for yourself. But for today, let's go through the basics. We have a data extension, such as our sample rows. We can use the LookupRows to return values across an entire row in that data extension. The first thing to do is to use our LookupRows function to provide a criteria. For example, looking up the rows in our data extension where the ID is equal to 1. That'll pick up our first row here. This returns a row set value, which can then be used in our next function, our row function, to specify which row in the row set we want to use. Now, of course, our row set could have returned multiple rows, so you have to use the row function to specify which row we're talking about. Now, in this case, we're only going to be using one row for each subscriber. So while the LookupRows returns just one row in the row set, we have to use our row function to specify that one row. Now, inside of our row set, we then, of course, will have the fields to return. Now, we can return each time a different value, just like we can do with our lookup function. In this case, I can use my field function to look up the name, which means when I look up rows where ID is equal to 1, returning our first row where the field name is going to be returned as our value. We can then return the value of Astro for our email. We can use the same methodology across our event log data extension to return back each of the values that we need across our event log data extension. So let's now try it out back in our email. So in the AMPscript code block of the true statement in our email, let's make our brand new LookupRows function. First of all, we'll go set at LookupRows is equal to our LookupRows function. We can jump across into our Salesforce Marketing Cloud documentation and find LookupRows. It's a data extension function, so we can find that under our function reference here under AMPscript, our function reference guide, scrolling down to our data extension section and finding LookupRows. We only have 3 ordinals to provide here: the data extension, the column to identify a value, and the value to use to match it. So in the example here, LookupRows in the zip code data extension, where city equals home city. Well, we can take this sample code, we'll copy it and go back into our email. LookupRows will be, of course, equal to a lookup on our event log data extension, where the ID is equal to ID. Just the same as our lookup function, but of course, we're not going to return a field. We're going to return the row set of our LookupRows. As you can see here, our LookupRows function returns a row set. Now, our next step is going to be to identify the row to use. So our next function to use is our data extension row function. Now, our syntax here, of course, is to use that row set as the very first ordinal, specify the row set, and then which row do you want to return is our second ordinal. So we can use our row function here. Let's take that, go back into our email content, and we'll say set at row will be equal to our function here. Our row set is our first one. So row set was our set value of LookupRows. Returning back which row number, well, again, since we are looking up the event log against the ID of that one subscriber, it's just going to be the first row. We're not going to have other matches because our event log data does not have duplicates. We just have to return the first row. So now we have our LookupRows and our row function set. Our final function is the field function. So again, back into our documentation, we can find our data extension field function. Our field function is going to have 3 ordinals we can provide, 2 of which are required. The first one, of course, is the row that we just specified in the previous function. And then the next ordinal is going to be the name of the field or attribute to return. Now for our field function, again, we can copy our sample here, take field, go back into our Marketing Cloud email, we can start to print out our values. So looking down here, we're now going to have the correct row set. We can now start to print out our code, our value, and our date. And we can do this by doing an inline AMPscript inside of this HTML section of our block. So the code, for example, we can say %% equals field equals %%. And of course, the row is the row value that we've just looked up, which is row, from our row set of our LookupRows, which we specified above for our subscriber, where ID is ID. The field that we want to return for voucher code is what? Well, back in our data extension, of course, the voucher code is voucher code. So I can copy the voucher code text field, copy that name, go back into the email and paste it just there into our field function. Now below that is going to be our voucher value. Now the value is going to be a different field. Go back into our DAO extension, have a look for ourselves, and the voucher value is of course called Lucky Door Prize. So in our properties, we'll copy the word Lucky Door Prize, go in here, and we can use that same field function. So we can say, once again, %% equals field, and start our function and then close it off. And our field function we'll use at row as the row set, looking up the Lucky Door Prize field. Now finally is our use by date. Now here's the fun part. We don't have a use by date for our voucher codes, but the marketing team has told us they do want to make a call to action for this voucher. They do want the customers to come back in and use that voucher ASAP. They've asked us to instead use a 30 days from send date. We want to give the customer 30 days to use the code from whence they received it. So back into our email, we can do a couple of things. We can use one of our date functions. So jumping back into our Salesforce Documentation, we can scroll down to our DateTime function and we can find our DateTime now. Now the now function gives us the current date time in the server time. So to start with, we can use our now function to print out the current date. Let's copy that and go back into our email and we'll print out the current date. We can do this by of course going %% equals now equals %%, and that'll be the current date time. But we're going to want to add 30 days to that date time. So back in our documentation, we can go back in and we can do a date add. Now what are we going to do to our date add function? Well, as you can see here, it returns the sum of a date and an integer along with a timestamp. So we can provide an input date. We can also then provide how many years, months, days, hours, or minutes to add, and then how many of those to add. You can jump down to the documentation here and see that date add, we can add to today's date 1 day. Well, that's a useful code. Let's take that code, copy it, and go back into our email. Now, of course, our now function can be replaced by our new date add function, where today will of course be a value of now. We want to add 30 days to this email, so it'll be adding 30 and D for days. And there we are. So we should now have an email ready to test out, and let's have a look for ourselves. We can go save and next to preview our email for our subscriber. Now hopefully for Brandy, one of our event attendees, will find the right value. So Brandy the marketer should have received a voucher, and Brandy's voucher should be what? Well, Brandy got $50 apparently, and the voucher code was DDD59. Let's have a look, and of course the voucher code DDD59, good, the right voucher code. We do have $50, great. And of course the use by date is going to be today plus 30 days. Now the date today is going to be in July, so August will be our plus 30 days, which is looking good. Fantastic. One thing we do want though is to make sure that the date and the value for the voucher show as some nice pretty values for our subscribers. So we're going to want to put some of that format functions around both the number and the date. So to start with, let's go back in and format the date. So we'll go back into our content. We can go and find that format date function. You can see here DateTime format date. You can find all the information that we need, including the documentation on the AMPscript date and time formatting. This one here with our year, month, and day. Now for today's voucher code, we're going to try and produce it in a very human readable form. Let's do it as the year, month, and day using the hyphens just like this. A very nice and easy to read date format. So to do this, let's go and put in our year, month, day for our current date time. So back into our content, go into our email, and here is our date add. We now want to put around this date add function our format date. So let's go in and take our format date function. We can see from our example here, we need to have those ordinals. So let's copy format date. We'll make some space above so we can then merge it in later. Now, format date value is going to be what? Well, it's going to be this value here. So we'll take that out and put that as our date value. The format we want is going to be, what do we say it was? 1, 2, 3, 4 years, 2 months, and 2 days. And we don't want to show an AM or a PM or any kind of date, time, or seconds, so I'll leave it as it is. And for the culture code, let's use the EN/US for good measures. Now we have our format date function set out. We can copy this back down into our use by date, just like that. And so now in one clean function, we're going to render today's date. We're going to date add 30 days to that date. We're then going to format that value in the year, month, day with no time in the EN/US date format, and printing that entire value out using that function. So let's now give it a go. Clean this back up to the top line just like that, and we'll go next. And hopefully we find it's going to show through as the 13th of August, 2023. There we are, August 2023 and the 13th. Our next one to do is going to be the value for our number. For our format number function, we can jump back into our documentation and scroll down through our functions, down to our math section and find our format number. The format number, as we used previously, is a very easy syntax to use, provide the value and of course the required formatting style. So let's take our format number function and go back into our email. We can see here in our content, we're going to want to format our voucher door prize, our lucky door prize. So let's make some space above, just so we can print it out nice and cleanly. What is the number to format? Well, it's this field value here that we were printing out previously. Let's cut that from there and put it as our first ordinal. Back into our documentation, we have our value set. What's the format type? Well, we do want to use currency with that $ in front for ourselves. And we don't want to have decimal points, or maybe we do. Let's put 2 decimal points so it's a nice clean dollar figure like you would see on a price tag. Of course, our data does not have decimal points, so we can use our formatting in our syntax here. We use currency and then 2 to specify 2 decimal places. Back into our email, we can make sure that we use our format number, formatting our field. The second ordinal will be, in brackets, currency 2. And quotation marks there. And for our third is going to be our culture code. And once again, let's use the ENUS to make sure it knows we're operating in dollars. That's our format number function. Let's now copy it back down into our text here. We can clean up our working space. I do find that making some spaces between functions like that's a great way to test your code, to write things out before you do transpose them back into where you want to use the code. Writing it all out on one line can be a bit tricky sometimes, and so making that space makes it a little bit easier. So once again, we are going to be using our field function to look up our row, which is just here, which is row 1 from our row set of lookup rows, just here, from our event log data extension, looking up where ID is equal to ID. Once we have that lucky door prize value from the field function here, that's our value. We're then using the format function, format number function here to render it in the currency 2 standard using ENUS. We should now have $50.00 and our voucher code above. So let's go next and have a look and make sure that Brandy's value comes out at $50. Yes, it does. Perfect. We can go forwards one as well and check it out for Cody, who of course did not attend the event. Nothing shows. Go back. There we are. Brandy's values all show. Back once more to Appy, and there's nothing there. Back once more to Einstein. Einstein apparently got a $10 voucher code. 1062 was the voucher code. Let's make sure. Einstein 1062. Good. So our code's all working so far. Looking great. Back over on the email, we can now do a few things to clean up what we've done. You can see straight away that the formatting for our previous email set here shows that we've got an indentation for our heading, which does not follow through into our sample text or dynamic content below. And we did do this sample text piece in one of our previous emails, which shows our block setting with a padding of 40. We can do the same thing below by clicking on that sample block. We can go on our block settings and increase our padding here to a set of 40. We can unlock that and choose 40 on the left and 40 on the right. Now it's indented. Do the same thing for our block below to make sure it's also nice and clean and indented. Unlocking that set so we have all 4 options and making it 40 on the left and 40 on the right. Now for our voucher set here, we could make it even more indented so it's even more clear to our customers. Let's make it 60 indented left and right so it's even more set in. There it is there. And because we are working in a text block here, we do have our what you see, what you get UI to modify our text in real time. So our voucher information here can be made bold. We can select each of these text sets and choose to make it bold, just like this. That's going to make our content here stand out a bit more for our subscribers. We can try it out for ourselves by going done and checking out our email on the next screen. And hopefully our new bold section stands out a bit more. Of course, we have our sample text above, and then congratulations, here's our voucher code below. That's pretty good, but our dollar sign here and our value doesn't really pop. It's not really showing me how much I've won. What we could do is we could change the color of our voucher value based on the amount we've been awarded. We could say, for example, to get a blue dollar amount, if we have a $10 voucher, green if it's 25, and red if it's a $50 voucher. So we can go back into our content. We can make some dynamic content now to show some different colors. Now the reason for this is we could come in here and of course change this section of our text. We can use our text modifier here, our text color. We could just choose red. The problem is though, as you go and preview this, it's going to show as red for all of our value amounts. We must show it dynamically, different colors for different amounts. We have $10 of course there. Moving forward onto Brandy, and it's still showing red for 50. So how can we show different colors for different amounts without creating different emails for each segment? Well, we can go back into our content and do some really cool AMPscript. Within our if statement here, of course, we do have our if attended equals true, and this whole section's rendering if that value is true. Now our code block here did go ahead. We were looking up those row amounts as we had previously. Our lucky door prize amount, of course, being looked up, which we were then printing inside of our email. Rather than just printing out the amount, what if we took that value and did some more personalization with it? So what if instead we took our formatted number value and we can cut that out from there. Let's go above now and we'll say set at number is equal to, and paste that amount, the formatted number value there. And now below we could say if the number value we've just returned, which of course is going to be the formatted number, which actually we don't need the format number. Let's leave the format number below. We'll use that later. We're just going to take the amount from above. So we'll take that field function just like that and leave the format value number. Of course, we'll be looking up the number value later on. So we're going to leave format number and just take the field function. So we've got lucky door prize coming through as number. So if number is equal to 10, then we want to show the color code of blue. So we'll say then set BG for background, or actually TC, the text color, will be equal to blue. Else if the number is equal to 25, we want to show the color of, what is it? Green. So we'll show set at TC will be equal to green. Else if the number is 50, we're going to show the value as red. So set the text color as red. Else, if all else fails, just in case, we're going to set the text color as black. And of course, end the if statement. Okay. Now, of course, we're going to need to get the color codes for each of our sets here. Now, we do know that blue, we want to show as blue. Green, we're going to want to show as green. And red, we want to show as red. Now, a cool trick inside Marketing Cloud is within our text block here, we are, of course, using our Content tab. We can scroll across and use our HTML editor. We can see for ourselves the actual HTML that's occurring behind that text. We can see here is our if statement. Now we did have our if number equals 10, and you can see here we've got all kinds of colors going on. Go back into our content, the if word was using that same color as above. And you can see here the if is grouped into that same color from before. In HTML, we can also see that we set the color of blue to be color and this code here. Green was this color here, and red was this color here. Again, those hash colors are called hex colors, and they're used to specify color codes in HTML. So what we can do is say the text color for blue is going to be this value. So what we can do is copy that value, or cut it out, and we can instead go TC equals, and in brackets, that color code. Do the same thing below. We again just want the color code. So we don't want the span style stuff. We don't want the word color. We just want that hash and then that color code, not the colon, and then not the word color again. But we do want the break to show next line. If number is 50, then the color will be that. And of course, black for black. Now the black color code is going to be in quotation marks. We're going to have hash 000000, I believe. All right. If we now go back into our content, we won't have those colors of blue, green, and red. We should now have those character sets, which we do. Perfect. Now we have those character sets, and of course we don't need those at the end either, so let's make sure that we remove those from the end. we're going to have these as the color codes. Now what that means is this color code below here, you can see we've actually got this entire section is color coded as red. And we can check that for ourselves in HTML by going back and seeing, yep, there's our span where the style color is equal to this fixed color. We don't want to use that fixed color. We want to use this new dynamic color that we just set above. So as you can probably guess, we're going to print out an AMPscript value. Now you can see here in our style section, the color is equal to, in our hash color there, we can just remove this static hash color by deleting it, and we can now print out AMPscript. So again, back into our syntax, we can interlace HTML and AMPscript together. So I can go %% equals v to print out our value, equals %%, and we can print out the @tc for text color value inside of our color attribute of our style tag in the span that is encompassing our format number, which will be looking up the format number for the number value that we set above. There it is there. Formatting as currency to ENUS. Back into our content, of course, we've now lost the color coding from our text section here, because of course we are going to be using that AMPscript to render the text color. Let's try it out. We'll go done, and you can see here that our email shows, of course, just the code. We can't see the actual text color being rendered until we go and preview it for our subscriber. So we'll go next. And of course for Brandy, who received $50, we are hoping to see a red culture code, and no, unfortunately, we have an error where our lookup value is not returning the correct set. So let's go back into our content and see what we did wrong. So back over here in our code, hopefully we do find in our HTML, we've got our breaks, which are bringing up our next lines. We've got if number is equal to, and of course we should have 25, which we are getting. Right, we'll double check it out by going back and see our function for ourselves and read and see what happened. There's an error in your email. Please contact what's going on, unrecognized expression, member ID set. Set at number is equal to something. That's why we've got some code there, set at number. So we'll go back and have a look at our text. Number, that's why in our HTML, we are not meant to have that color code. So at number, no, we don't want to have any HTML there. It's just going to be the correct code, just like that. Let's clean up that code there as well. All right, back into our content, and hopefully, yep, that color's all gone. And we should now see the right value going through. Beautiful. So for Brandy, who we knew had a $50 amount, we are now seeing it in red tick. We go back now and find our other recipient. We should find Einstein got blue 10. Perfect. Let's now find someone who got 25 for green. So we'll navigate into our data extensions and we'll find our sample rows. There it is there. And who received 25? Actually, our event log, sorry. Who received 25? It was Ernie received 25. And Astro, of course. So we'll use Astro. We've got sample rows, Astro. Select. And hopefully Astro sees green 25. Green 25. Success. So before we close out today's video, let's talk about what happened there with that error. If I go back into my text block here, you can of course see that we do have some formatting showing through in our text. And I can always go back in and change the text color of my code. As I did before, this section was in red. When I go and save this and go back into my email and try and render it, it's not going to work as intended. I'll show you what happens. It's going to throw that error because it's gone and detected that there's actually code happening between the equal sign and the F. There's a whole lot of HTML code happening just in here. That's why this error is popping up. Now we can of course use the error to read and see what's gone wrong. Where did it happen? What was the expression? We can see here set number equals and then something went wrong. So the error we know happened after the set at number. It happened somewhere in here. And of course we can tell it's because there's some characters happening in here that are not expected. So to fix that, be very careful with your own AMPscript code. You always go back into your text block and make sure that you use the HTML editor setting to check your AMPscript. Because as you can see, set number equals, and then here we go with code that it did not expect. We didn't want to see this formatting code. We wanted to see the AMPscript code here. So you have to be very careful that you don't apply those stylings in your text blocks or your freeform blocks. Make sure that you remove that additional styling. So we can see there, I deleted that and deleted that section there. We should instead get the right values. So I'll go done. And now we should have the right stuff coming through. Go next once more, and hopefully we don't get those same AMPscript errors, because now we're instead having the correct AMPscript syntax and we are not interjecting it with HTML code. Looking good, and we now have our function working as expected again. So that lesson again is just to make sure that you always go back and check your AMPscript using the HTML setting, because there may be some content that occurs behind that additional content code, some formatting that you can't see in the content tab, so always check over on the HTML tab to see what else is happening behind the scenes. And with our AMPscript code complete and tested, we can now hand this over to the email team to send out to those subscribers, knowing full well that they will only receive that voucher content block if they are entitled to see it. And that brings us to the end of Lesson 3 in the 3-part series of the Introduction to AMPscript in Salesforce Marketing Cloud. I hope you've enjoyed learning AMPscript with me, and if you have, I'd love to see a big thumbs up on the video and a comment below to let me know what you enjoyed the most and what you'd like to learn next in AMPscript. Until then, happy AMPscripting, and don't forget that you can subscribe to the channel so that you are notified when I release more Salesforce Marketing Cloud content.